National Congress, on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, good morning and Shubh Diwali to our Hindu community as we prepare for the greatest week of celebration of the Hindu faithful. Good morning to each and every one of you. Alongside me is none other than Senator the Honorable Damian Lyder, a businessman, a patriot, a man of the people who fights for the people of Trinidad and Tobago at every juncture and has sacrificed family time, business time for you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and the United National Congress to return good governance to Trinidad and Tobago. This morning, Senator Lyder will be bringing some critical issues to the fore that have ensured that your lives have become more painful, more difficult. Businesses are suffering under this PNM regime led by Prime Minister Keith Christopher Rowley. So without further ado, I introduce to you Senator the Honorable Damian Lyder.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. I say good morning to the media, good morning to all the listening public on social media, Facebook, etc., to all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I welcome you to this Sunday press conference under the United National Congress. I thank you, Senator Roberts, for your overly kind introduction. But we are in troubling times, ladies and gentlemen. And here we are on our usual press conferences, bringing to you the issues that impact the lives and livelihoods of our citizens in this country and exposing this government's mismanagement of our economy and overall mismanagement of our country. This morning, I will be once more discussing the issues that plague the business community and citizens in general as well. And by that, I mean the government's neglect of paying VAT refunds back on a timely basis. This government policies, this government's management of the economy, seeing a foreign exchange crisis that has now gone completely out of hand. And ladies and gentlemen, during my budget debate just a few weeks ago, I would have shared with you some of these issues in that budget debate. I would have indicated that we see now banks that are cutting their credit to operate their businesses. And right here, a few weeks ago, I highlighted these issues in a press conference. And then previous to that, my colleague, MP Devendranath Tanku, who shadows finance, was successful in pressuring the Minister of Finance to admit that there was a foreign exchange crisis in this country. But instead of the Minister of Finance admitting that this was mismanagement by the government that caused this, he blamed everyone else under the sun. He blamed citizens of this country for spending too much money on online purchases. He blamed businesses in this country for not repatriating their foreign exchange. He blamed everyone under the sun except blaming this PNM government administration that has mismanaged our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, now we fast forward to the budget, and the Minister of Finance basically delivered no real ideas on how to solve this crisis. He has promised a conversation of transfer pricing regime. He has promised a ceiling increase on the Exim Bank US dollar facility, yet he has withheld what that ceiling was. He's refrained to tell us what that ceiling was. And we also see him promising, him and the Honorable Minister of Trade, promising all these fancy gimmicks to assist SMEs. But as we have seen in this last 8 years, this government has failed SMEs. So we don't expect that those gimmicks and those projects that they promise will actually materialize. And as the minister continues to blame everyone under the sun except the government, they come with all sorts of tricks to solve this issue. But we must remind the citizens of this country the realities of this economy, where we've seen an economy under this PNM contract by more than 20% under this regime. And according to the recent central bank statistics that we've seen, And past statistics we would have seen in 2015 under a then UNC-led government where foreign reserves stood at some 9.93 billion US dollars. And by 2019, before the COVID pandemic, because we know they like to blame everything on COVID, by 2019, we saw that this government reduced foreign reserves to some $6.92 billion. And then most recently, by 2022, we've seen them decline it again to $6.83 billion in terms of our US foreign reserves. And this is almost $3 billion in US foreign reserves wiped out under this PNM regime. Now, where this all started, ladies and gentlemen, because this was the recent crisis that has come. Even though the crisis has been heightened, it's not a recent crisis. This is something that has been going on for the last few years under this government. And it started especially when the PNM government closed down Petrotrin, where we saw more than $350 million US dollars in revenues per annum coming from Petrotrin wiped out. And since then, the PNM has done nothing to return this level of revenue to the country that was lost by their uncaring and reckless decision to close down Petrotrin. But it's not only Petrotrin. You see, the rest of the energy sector has declined under this government. The energy sector, which is the backbone of our economy, we have seen it drastically decline. When we look at the Point Lisas, that has been a disaster where we see the level of gas supply decline, causing downstreamers to either shut their doors or exit our shores. When we looked at Proman M2, gone. Proman M3, gone. Tringen 1, gone. Nutrien 3, gone. And just months ago, we saw in the Daily Express, dated, in fact, just earlier this month, I meant to say, we saw on the Daily Express on October the 14th, an article named Lack of Gas. We see Methanex announce the 2024 closure of the Atlas plant and the prioritization of a smaller Titan plant due to the scarce gas supply. Ladies and gentlemen, we must never forget that according to the IHS Global in 2013, this was under a UNC government, Trinidad and Tobago was the largest exporter of ammonia and the second largest exporter of methanol in the world. Some will remember that is when Kelvin Ramnarine was the Minister of Energy, Senator Roberts. This was a government, a UNC government that cared about the energy sector, cared about natural gas supply. But it was only recently in the budget debate, our honorable political leader, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, did an eloquent job in that debate in really expressing the decimation of the energy sector, and which now causes this foreign exchange crisis that we're in today. She indicated that between 2015 and 2023, there has been drastic reductions, and I will call it out. 63% in drilling activity, a decline. A 32% decline in natural gas production. A 37% decline in LNG production. A 28% decline in oil production. Direct jobs in the energy sector has collapsed by 52% between 2015 and 2022. When UNC left office, there were 22,500 jobs. Mrs. Persad-Bissessar indicated in the budget debate that has reduced to now 10,000 jobs. And in fact, I just saw a recent report, the Q3 of 2020 country, that have gone on the breadline, no longer employed in the energy sector. Many of them are not able to find jobs, afford to pay rent, afford to live. Families in a desperate position today. And we see this continuing under this government. Rig days have fallen by 63% between 2015. And in our consultations recently with senior energy officials, I will not call their name out of respect for the professionalism of the energy sector. I will not call their names, right? But we pose the question, the UNC posed the question, what is the likelihood of the gas supply to grow over the next few years? And the response was startling. They indicated that it is unlikely that our gas supply will even be at flat point, meaning same production. So we expect to see a continuous decline in natural gas supply until at earliest 2028. Senator Roberts, how many years of sufferation do the citizens have to go through under this PNM government now as a result of their mismanagement? Therefore, it's clear that the energy sector, the bedrock of our economy, has been in constant and remarkable decline since 2015. So the closure of Petrotrin, the closure of 1/3 of Point Lisa's estate has now exacerbated this foreign exchange issue that the businesses in this country now have to pay the price for this. Senator Roberts, we know also that the fact that it's not just the energy sector. We know that more than $1.5 billion in foreign direct investment, US dollars, in foreign direct investment have exited our shores. Companies like ArcelorMittal, companies like Lever Brothers shut down their operations. These were companies that were bringing in millions of US dollars in revenue into our country, no longer bringing in these revenues and no longer employing the thousands of persons in this country. And that is why we see joblessness in this country today. When the PNM government speaks about reducing unemployment, the numbers do not lie. Between 2015 to now, we have seen almost 50,000 jobs wiped out by this PNM government. That is 50,000 less humans that will bring incomes home to their families. Sufferation for the citizens of our country. So this foreign exchange crisis is very much, yet again, a PNM crisis. However, ladies and gentlemen, what we have seen in the last 6 months is a heightening foreign exchange crisis in this country. The supply of foreign exchange, mainly US dollars, has been more scarce in recent times. I know banks that are only given 1/10 of the foreign exchange to companies that they did previously. As I said, people are lining up for hundreds and $200 when they need thousands to operate. In my debate, I revealed exactly how this situation was created by this PNM government. You see, Senator Roberts and the population, the PNM really has a legacy in creating a problem, creating a mammoth problem, coming to the country with a solution for that problem, and then wanting you to pat them on the back and congratulate them for bringing that solution. And then the irony of it is that the solution never materializes. It never actually solves the problem. And what do I talk about in this particular case? I talk about this mammoth problem, which was called the government's neglect of paying back VAT refunds to businesses and manufacturers in this country. So in this government's attempting to solve this runaway train, which is the worsening VAT refund situation, they created another problem, which is what we know now as this heightened foreign exchange crisis in this country. So under the watch of the Honorable Minister of Finance, the VAT regime has been completely mismanaged. And this mismanagement has crippled the private sector. Because, and let me say, it's because of the patriotism, and I want to recognize someone here today, because of the patriotism of a former independent senator, Senator Amrita Dino Ryan, who questioned the Minister of Finance as to what is the current situation of VAT refunds owing to manufacturers in this country. And of course, the UNC asked that question and the minister refused to answer us. But he was put under the gun by the independent senator, who, by the way, is no longer an independent senator. I wonder why. I wonder why she was removed. I don't know. I cast no aspersions. But she asked the very difficult question about where we stood with VAT refunds in this country. The Minister of Finance, being forced to give an answer, indicated to the population that as of March 2022, some 7.8 billion TT dollars were owing to manufacturers and businesses in this country. Now, of course, we're in October, so we don't know where that is today. But in a knee-jerk reaction, the Minister of Finance indicates to the population through the Senate that a bond would be issued of $3 billion to repay VAT refunds to manufacturers. He also indicated that between $1 or $2 billion would be paid from the consolidated fund to lessen the $7.8 billion VAT refund. And I want to remind the population that the minister is not doing any favors here by issuing this $3 billion bond. Yes, the manufacturers are happy to get this bond so they can get $3 billion back. But what this Minister of Finance has done is he's shifted the debt of VAT refunds from the manufacturers now to the banks. Because when the manufacturers receive these bonds and cash them into the banks, the government still has to come back and pay the banks this $3 billion. And the Minister of Finance indicated at a 3.15% interest rate per annum. So if the Minister of Finance has actually issued the full $3 billion in bonds, and they've all been cashed into the bank, in 3 years from now, the taxpayers of this country, not the banks, not the energy company, not Minister Imbert, the taxpayers of this country will have to foot a bill of $284 million in interest expenditure to cover the mismanagement of this government. You, the taxpayers, have to pay for that, while your families can't get beds in hospitals, cannot get medicine, cannot get school feeding program, cannot get baby grant, milk grant, textbooks. You, the people, have to suffer for this government's mismanagement. And then the Minister of Finance mentions nothing in his budget debate of 4 hours long, nothing about VAT refunds. He mentions nothing about it. While this government continues to refrain from paying VAT refunds back to manufacturers, stifling them, taking away their liquidity, stifling their growth, unethically withholding VAT refunds from them. So this mismanagement of VAT refunds further amplifies our foreign exchange crisis. And you ask the question, how does it amplify the crisis? So in consultations, now we didn't do this by guess, in consultations with the various banks, senior persons in the energy sector, former ministers of energy, we have come to learn that these VAT refunds, this portion that will be paid out via bonds, this $3 billion TT dollars in bonds paid out to the government, a big chunk of that, in fact more than 70% of that, is being paid to the energy companies. So this means that these companies, these energy companies, would have somewhat of about $2.1 billion in TT dollars, a wash of TT cash coming into them as of around May, June, somewhere around there, Senator Roberts. And what does this mean? This means that these companies receive this wash of TT dollars, and given that these energy companies would normally have to convert their US dollar reserves, the revenues that they get, to TT dollars to pay for their local expenditure, by employees, rent, manufacturing, they no longer have to convert these US dollars because they are awash with TT dollars. So you are removing a significant amount of US dollars from the commercial banks, all in one shot. As I said, we believe that in our consultations, roughly 70% of these VAT bonds would have gone to the energy sector, $2.1 billion. So that's over 300 million US dollars being taken out of the system. It's not that we lost the revenue, you know. The crisis is not that. The crisis is that you have removed this US dollars from the system for what would be almost a 6 to 8 month period of revenues coming from these energy companies. That is the crisis here today. Ladies and gentlemen, the consultations with the energy companies, we understood that this potentially means that energy players have around 6 to 8 months of TT dollar cover when it comes to their paying their operational expenditure in this country. Therefore, we could see this crisis going all the way up to December, Senator Roberts. It's from May all the way to December. And this would mean that this current crisis inside of a already existing foreign exchange crisis will continue to be exacerbated for the upcoming months. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the United National Congress alone saying this. It was on Wednesday of this week gone by, when we looked at the Business Express, the Express Business, we see Forex faux pas. That is what we see here. A story by Vishana Pagu. And I want to congratulate the Express for a very balanced story. This is why I hold up this paper here today. Because the journalists at the Express, for this particular matter, properly investigated this. They didn't speak to just the United National Congress. In this article, they spoke to a former Minister of Energy. They spoke to the head of the Energy Chamber, Dr. Dax Driver. So we saw that they consulted. And these persons that they would have consulted with basically echoed the same story that I'm giving you here today. So, and I will just take an example of one of these, and I'll quote one of the examples in this Express article, where the former Minister of Energy, Kevin Ramnarine, indicated, and I quote, there is a relationship between the energy sector, commercial banks, and the foreign exchange market that unfortunately many do not appreciate. The energy companies operating in Trinidad and Tobago sell significant amounts of US dollars to the commercial banks, since they need TT dollars to pay contractors, service contracts, pay employees, and pay VAT. In May, when the government issued $3 billion in VAT bonds, the energy companies would have subscribed to the bond and would have received significant TT dollars, which would have reduced their need to convert US dollars into TT. This meant that less US dollars was available to the commercial banks. This, in my opinion, exacerbated the already tight forex market in TNT. I wouldn't worry to quote Dr. Dax Driver, but he basically echoed the exact sentiments in his own words as president of the Chamber, the Energy Chamber of Commerce. So basically, it is clear that this PNM government, the government that killed Petrotrin, mothballed Train 1, crashed the economy, stole the future of an entire generation, has also created the perfect storm when it comes to VAT refunds and foreign exchange. I call this the perfect storm. So just as I asked you in the budget debate, I ask, who do you think, ladies and gentlemen, this will impact the worst? I'm asking the media to listen to this part, because I saw the media speak very well about how the crisis originated. But the media also needs to report how this will negatively impact the citizens of this country. So I'm asking the media to listen carefully here to this, as to who this is going to impact. Now, this impacts everyone in the country, all businesses, all citizens. But who do you think it impacts the most, Senator Roberts? It is the small, medium, and micro businesses in this country that will be impacted the most here. They are the ones that are standing in the bank for hundreds when they need thousands. Many of these SMEs are forced to break the law to acquire foreign exchange on the black market. By this government creating this crisis, they have forced almost every business person in this country to break the law. It is against the law to purchase foreign exchange via the black market. But every businessman is forced to do that simply to survive, especially the SMEs. So we have a whole country of lawbreakers trying to survive in business today. And I remind you that the single biggest contributing factor to non-energy exports in this country is the fact that many manufacturers are also forced, SMEs, are forced to export their products just to get foreign exchange, causing a shortage of products on the local market, just to survive. So when the Honorable Minister of Trade and the Honorable Minister of Finance wants to boast about non-energy exports increasing, this is not as a result of any fertile ground that the government has created for them. This is as a result of desperation by businesses in this country who have to export their products to get foreign exchange. So the PNM government must not take credit for this. But what they must do is put that badge of dishonor of this forex crisis and staple it directly to their chest today. The minister, you see, when we see the utter neglect of these small, medium, and micro enterprises by this government, many of them now, Senator Roberts, will now struggle to survive after Christmas. Some of them gone before Christmas. but many of them will shut their doors after Christmas. You see, for raw materials, for small businesses, manufacturers, or small retailers in this country, for them to import their finished goods that they would like to retail, for them to import their raw materials into this country to manufacture products, for them to do so, to be able to benefit from Diwali and Christmas sales, the high season in this country. Many of these SMEs, especially, all businesses, but many of these SMEs especially, would have had to have ordered and paid for their raw materials and paid for their finished goods in the months of June, July, August. Many of these raw materials and products come from as far as China, Turkey, Pakistan. To bring these products in sometimes, Brazil, sometimes it takes between 3 to 4 months, at least 2 months on the water via shipping, at least a half a month to process the order, manufacture the order and ship. So we are seeing 2.5, 3.5 months to land products here in time for Diwali and Christmas sales. So when you have starved the business community, and in particular the SMEs, the small, medium, and micro companies of this US dollars, they are unable to purchase the raw materials, to purchase the items for retail in their retail stores, whether it be garments, shoes, hats, whatever it may be. They're unable to do so and bring that in time for Christmas. This crisis has caused that. So many of these SMEs will now suffer from a lack of sales during the peak periods of Diwali and Christmas because of the inability of them to acquire foreign exchange to purchase these goods. And what do you think will be the result that will happen to these SMEs in this country? What do you think will be the result? What will be the result? Will there be many of these SMEs, small, medium, and micro enterprises, after Christmas, when they cannot pay their rent in January and February in the malls and plazas, when they cannot pay their staff and workers because they've missed the Christmas season? Many of these small, medium, and micro companies are going to shut their doors and join the more than 6,000 SMEs that closed their doors under this P&M government after the COVID pandemic. That is what is going to happen. And what is going to happen? These SMEs, the owners of these SMEs, will lose their life savings. The employees that are sent home, the thousands of employees that are sent home as a result of this crisis, will now be unemployed on the breadline. Many before Christmas, many after Christmas. I put it to you, Senator Roberts, this is going to be a very dark and dreary Christmas for many people in this country. Not only business owners, but employees who have been sent home as a result of this crisis. This crisis that has been put in the Express newspapers today. So I continue to speak loudly about this matter because I know how the SMEs feel. You see, I too am suffering from this crisis. As a businessman in this country, I too suffer from this. I own a medium-sized business in this country. I require foreign exchange to run my business. I can tell you first-handedly, in the last 4 months, I have never had such a disastrous situation when it comes to getting foreign exchange from banks in this country. I have been begging banks. I have had banks sit with me and tell me that they were only prepared to give me $10,000 for the month. $10,000. How can you run a company with 50 employees on $10,000 a month? The same representative of the bank sat with me, shaking their heads, saying to me, they have witnessed over the last 4 months, week after week, small, medium, and micro companies, businesses in this country shutting their doors. The banks are saying it. The business chambers are saying it. We in United National Congress are saying it. Me as a businessman, I am saying it. I had to recently get a small amount of money to pay for a shipping company to clear a container because the shipping companies will only accept US dollars today. They will not accept TT dollars. What a shame and disgrace. And I had to scrape up to get $2,500 to pay for shipping. Otherwise, they would not release my containers. And if they would not release my containers, I pay them rich and I pay rent. That is what businesses in this country are facing today under this government. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have seen many of my business colleagues leave business today. And in the end, by this government withholding VAT refunds and creating this foreign exchange crisis today, I put it to you that this was an irresponsible, this was a dangerous, and this was a reckless decision by this government as it pertains to the VAT bonds and the crisis that has ensued as a result of foreign exchange. As businesses continue to suffer in this economy, I have to ask the question as to why did the government withhold these VAT refunds for so long? Why did they let VAT refunds accrue to more than $8 billion, the largest amount owed in our history under this government? And a colleague reminded me of something earlier. It was a previous PNM government back in the 80s, I think it was 1988, 89, that took our foreign reserves to zero. And this government is on track to do it again. Ladies and gentlemen, so why have they withheld these VAT refunds? It makes no fiscal sense to hold these VAT refunds for so long and then hastily come out now and pay bonds and crash our economy as a result. I put it to you that this government has engaged in a sinister practice when it comes to VAT refunds. I put it to you that this government has crashed our economy. They have destroyed our revenue. They have killed business. And they have devastated the nation's liquidity via the love for their loans, their mismanagement, to such a degree that they need to hold these VAT refunds now. The economy is bankrupt, Senator Roberts. It's the only way that you're not paying back these funds. You don't have the money to pay it. So we see by withholding these VAT refunds, the government has basically taken a multi-billion-dollar interest-free loan from the manufacturers in this country while they continue to mismanage our country with all these big highway projects, squander our money on all kinds of legacy projects, the millions of dollars in legal briefs, or billions now I think, in legal briefs, while the manufacturers of this country have to suffer as a result of that. This crisis will worsen. It will continue to worsen. And let me tell you why this crisis will continue to worsen. VAT refunds will continue to build past $8 billion, perhaps even past $9 billion. This means that the government will have no choice but to continue all of these ill-timed payments and payment scheme that will drive up our national debt and further tighten the already desperate foreign exchange supply situation we have in this country. If VAT refunds were $7.8 billion in March 2022, and if the minister paid the full $3 billion in bonds to the manufacturers, this would mean there would still be $4.8 billion owing from March of this year. And we are now in October. So unless the government could come out and tell us they've been paying VAT refunds from the Consolidated Fund, they may have put back on the billions of dollars, taking us back upwards to $8 or $9 billion again. So they dug a hole to fill a hole, created a foreign exchange crisis, and now back in the same hole they were in back in March of this year. That is the mismanagement by this Minister of Finance and by the PNM government in general. So think about today and the last few months, how hard it's been to get foreign exchange. How long do you think this situation will continue? How much coverage has the government given the energy companies by giving them these bonds? That's the questions I want to know. Is it going to end in December? Is the crisis going to end in January? Did the minister make any consideration? Did the minister consult with energy companies, with SMEs, with banks, with the business chambers? Did the minister bother to consult with them when he was issuing these bonds and what would be the crisis that would come from that. We did our consultations. Did the minister do that? Did the minister think about taking some of the recommendations from the various chambers of commerce, the manufacturing, the TTMA, on how to manage VAT refunds in this country? When some of these chambers, like the American Chamber of Commerce, had indicated that they should put VAT into a separate area to properly manage it, not muddle it with the consolidated fund, so that VAT refunds can be paid back quickly to manufacturers. There have been a plethora of suggestions. I'm not going to sit here today to call them out. The chambers have said this countless times to this government. I've heard more than 4 or 5 solutions to this VAT crisis, and the Minister of Finance refuses to listen to the Chambers of Commerce, to the Manufacturing Association, refuse to take their advice. He ignores them. So we have to ask the question, why did the government not release more foreign exchange from the central bank when they were coming to issue these bonds? Common sense would tell you, if 70% of the VAT bonds are going to energy companies and they're in TT dollars, common sense will tell you that the energy companies will not have to change their foreign exchange to pay their local suppliers and to pay their local expenditure. Did the minister and his government try to understand what that risk would be to the foreign exchange in this country, and maybe put some and issue some US dollars from the central bank to mitigate against this crisis today? We have to ask that. So why was there no consultation? I put it to you, the public, that this government has guaranteed several months of this mounting VAT crisis, foreign exchange crisis, and they will have no choice but to come back again to do this. So I have to ask the minister again. I've asked on 5 occasions now, and I dare the minister, if you're named man, answer these questions. Come clean to the citizens of this country. Come clean to the businesses in this country today and tell us how much of those $3 billion in VAT bonds were issued, were actually paid out in this year. How much of the $1 to $2 billion from the consolidated fund that you promised to be paid out in the last fiscal year, how much of that was actually paid out, if any, at all? And I ask you again, Mr. Minister, what is the current total amount of VAT refunds owing to manufacturers in this country? And are you, Mr. Minister, coming again next year with this devastating VAT bond arrangement that has basically backfired on you, the government, this PNM government, and on the citizens and the small, medium, and micro companies in this country? So, as I come to a close, as I said earlier, it is the small, medium, and micro companies that are going to suffer in this country. The suitcase traders, the hustlers, the man trying to make a little honest living, make a few dollars in Christmas rather than resort to a life of crime. The big boys, let me tell you, the big manufacturers, the big boys are okay. We have nothing against the big manufacturers. They contribute to paying taxes in this country. They contribute to thousands of heads of employment. So we have nothing against the big boys, the big manufacturers. But they will be okay. They will be all right. They will get their foreign exchange. They will get the lion's share of the forex that is coming out of the Exim Bank. They will get foreign exchange from the exports that they have from their very mature export business. They will get it. But it is the small, medium, and micro enterprises that will continue to shut their doors, sending home thousands of employees, losing their life savings. While at the same time, you know what happens? Monopolies and oligarchies are created When these SMEs shut their doors, it is the big companies that will swallow up the business in this country. We will see monopolies. We are seeing monopolies being created today in many sectors. Today. This is a true representation of what the PNM stands for. An elitist government that believes exactly as the Prime Minister stated, that the rich must get richer in order for the poor to benefit. But how is the poor benefiting today? When we see companies closing, when we see mass unemployment and joblessness, when we see people hungry and starving, when we see people begging in the streets, every day we see mothers standing in the streets with their children begging simply to survive in this country. I've never seen that in my life, 47 years in this country. I've never seen this level of sufferation by the citizens of this country today. The government cannot continue using COVID as an excuse. It's done. COVID is done. The rest of the world has opened back up. The rest of the world continues to grow while we continue to decline. So how is the poor man benefiting today? How are the small, medium, and micro businesses benefiting today while we continue to see crime spiraling out of control as a result of sufferation? People are forced to turn to a life of crime. The highest murder count in our history. Daylight robberies, home invasions, rape. That is what we see as a result of this government. And in the end, the reward to these small, medium, and micro enterprises, you know what the reward is? Bankruptcy and sufferation. As this government continues to practice irresponsible, dangerous, and reckless policies and decisions in this economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are truly in a crisis. We are truly in a crisis. I tell you this as a businessman in this country, a medium-sized businessman. We are truly in a crisis. Enough is enough. It is time for this population to make a serious decision and put serious people to run this country. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lyder, for bringing to the fore some critical information. And what was key in his presentation is how decisions made at the highest echelons of the executive of the government, at the cabinet level, impact you, the people. I just came from by my barber on a Sunday because I have a press conference. And I do politics later. So I had to neaten up the bald head and the little beard and thing. And I'm sitting there, and the barber asked a gentleman, another client, what about politics, boy? What you think, how you find the country going? How you find this PNM going? And the gentleman said, listen to me, whatever government day, I have to wake up and go and hustle. I have to go and get my dollar. So it don't matter to me which government there. Well, I had to talk to the gentleman. I said, sir, while that is true, and you have to hustle, you have to get out there, and you have to get a dollar to feed your family and to pay the bills. It is the government's responsibility to create an environment to allow you to operate at a maximum or an optimum level. If you are out there and you hustling and you get your paycheck and then you get robbed one block down the road, you then will suffer. If you get your paycheck and you pay your bills and you're driving down the road and you bust a tire and you have to buy a tire for $500, that's food off your children's table. If you go in the grocery and your salary is the same and you get no increase, 1,001,001, you cannot make ends meet. So a government, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, is very critical. Senator Lyder spoke about complex issues, about bonds. Don't get tired of that. Don't get frightened by that. That big language. But the raw effect of poor decision making by Keith Rowley, the PNM, and Colm Imber, the engineer who builds stay there that fall down is that you have to suffer. That if you have a credit card, you could only get half your US. You have to suffer because if the businessmen and the importers can't get US, they have to go and buy it black market at a higher rate. Some buying at $8, $8.50, $9. Then you have to go now and pay higher at the grocery, at the shelves to make up for their increased costs. So politics impacts you in a great way. We are seeing now that Keith Rowley has advertised he's off on another jaunt at your expense to Dubai now. He's the traveling man, the golfing man, the tracksuit man. I want to know if he's leaving the country in a tracksuit because Ronald Saunders, a diplomat from Antigua, said our prime minister representing us who didn't have a suit to wear. Look, I put on a suit on a Sunday, come from by the barber. You understand? When all they're going down to the beach. He didn't have a suit to wear because he was going to travel. What prime minister travels in a tracksuit crumple up and like it end him dry clean? Like he just roll off a red couch. I would love to know. But these things impact our lives. So while Rowley's off to Dubai again, while our country is in total crisis across the board, the man who has been on the most holidays, the most golf course, the most traveling, who raised his per diem. So he getting a set of US, hundreds of US per day to buy food and so on at your expense. But you can't get US to go. You can't get US to pay your children tuition in university. And the PNM government is telling you that you are wrong for doing that. That you cannot, yes, I'm going to deal with that. That you cannot get any US at any time. You want to go and get a US, you have to go $50 at a time. If you need 1,500 US, old lady called me, she said, Anil, I have some TT, I want to buy some. I said, ma, what's the problem? They tell me I could only get 50 US per day in the bank. Anil are willing to pay X amount. I said, ma, no. Listen, if they tell you you're getting $50 a day in the bank, I'm very sorry. Take a deep breath, eat your breakfast, and go down the bank. If you need 1,500 US, go to the bank for 30 days and take out 50, 50, 50. Don't let anybody then go and abuse you. But this is how people are suffering from the policies of the government. But today I am going to show you all the abject, corrupt nature that is the PNM. From conception, from creation to now. Through one element, I could give you 50 stories of corruption, what the PNM does. When Coleman but in 2010 looked across the parliament floor, when I threw some crosstalk for him and I said, boy, if we had sent 3 more Maxis up in Dago Martin Northeast, Gavin Nicholas would have beat you. Coleman but looked across at me and he grinned that grin and he leaned forward. So I leaned forward intently to hear what Coleman, but the member for Dago Martin Northeast, had to tell me. He looked at me straight in my eyes and said, well, next time I will campaign. And that hit me straight in my heart. And as I remember it like yesterday, because it was so true. He did not campaign. He had not campaigned. I walked Aberdeen, O'Meara, the entire constituency 5 times without a hat. By the time I finished walking, my picture was one shade of brown and I was dark black because hot sun, no cap, no shades, looking people in the eye. Campaign like I out of style, walking 11 hours per day, taking an hour rest, then talking whole night in spot meeting to win a seat to try and serve the people. Call me, but the PNM don't have to campaign, they say, and they still get 10,760 votes. That's why we are in a mess, because the PNM wins elections in certain ways. Since 1961, where they gerrymandered the boundaries and they lied to Capildeo at Marlborough House to tell him, sign this here, we'll get independent, and when we reach home, we'll have an independent agency and so on, design the country and divide it up. Dr. Williams lied then, Dr. Rowley lies now. That's what the PNM does. They get you to vote then on emotion, on race, who is African and who is Indian and who is this. We are none of the other. We are Trinbagonians, each and every one of us. Then the third thing they do through the mass media and their blurring of issues, you will see anytime the media say, Keith Rowley did nonsense, bad decision, bad decision. Fitzgerald Hines, waste of time. Stuart Smallpin Young, waste of time. But the UNC, but Kamla, but Basdeo, they always have to try to placate and to equivocate. So that leaves most of you in a position that politics not important. What are you going to vote for? You want to know why? Because anytime the voter turnout is in an general election below 62%, the PNM will win because they gerrymander and they control the EBC. So what do? They get that percentage of you to say, like my boy by the barber, Anil, it don't matter who in power, I have to hustle. No, your hustle has more oomph. Your hustle redounds to your benefit more when Kamla Prasad, the CESA, and the UNCs in government, because you have cheaper products, inflation is lower, greater jobs, you're safer, you're getting robbed less, you're busting tire less, you have no new taxes, you have no VAT on goods, you have more grants, more food cards, you don't have to pay so much for education because Kamla is about gate 726 million as opposed to the PNM 285 million. You have fuel in your car with Kamla. Now you have to pay for gas. No regular gas. Diesel going up 200%. Premium going up 160%. Super going up 250%. These are things that impact you in your pocket. Because to put Rowley there instead of Kamla, a middle-class family of 4 is paying annually between $40,000 and $80,000. Why? The PNM has created a system that they could dance into government, stay in power, corruptly take your money and tell you, vote race and religion. And we fall for it each and every time. Let me tell you, today you open the papers and you see, yesterday and today, Rowley, he's incensed about $55 million wasted and called the DPP man. It's Rowley and the PNM who went and looked for a building. It's Rowley and the PNM who found a landlord who they like to find a building. It's Rowley and the PNM and the cabinet who decided on a monthly rental for the building. It's Rowley and the cabinet who signed the lease agreement with the landlord for the building. It's Rowley and the PNM who did not do the due diligence and did not get a building fit for purpose. It's not the DPP. The DPP has no authority so to do. But Rowley's incensed. That's 55 million of PNM corruption that Rowley comes out and pretends, oh, it's somebody else. Because it's always somebody else. It's never Rowley. We all also see 20 wooden bend up ladder that Fitzgerald at Elbert Hines woke up in time from his narcoleptic sleep to buy for $1 million. $1 million for Ben Wood. That's what the PNM is. And they follow the same system, the same playbook over and over. And today, I'm going to tell you, because one of the worst, most corrupt, spanning 2 decades, 2 different PNM regimes is now erupting in their face. And mention the rat shall run, we don't know. But the PNM corrupt ship, the chickens are coming home to roost with something called Nikwan or Naikwan, however you want to pronounce it. But one thing it spells is PNM corruption. We see Mr. PNM, and I will give you a list of names and then we will go through it. I did all my notes here and so on. All of this, right? But the story is so painful. It's so hurtful. And it's such a PNM corrupt manual that I will put down my notes and I will go straight from memory because it's from my heart and it hurts. Understand this. Mr. Ainsley Gill, this story will deal with people like Ainsley Gill, Independent Senator David Small, Allison due diligence, public servant extraordinaire, Permanent Secretary, Keith Rowley, Malcolm Jones, Stuart Smallpin Young, Faris Al-Rawi, Maxwell Coffey, Republic Bank, 120 million US. You heard Senator Lyder, pressure for US, yet your Republic Bank that you own, you have shares in, decided to give this company 120 million US, which is now flushed down the toilet. And who's going to have to pay that back? Whose interest rates, whose fees are going to have to go up? Yours. Whose share price is under pressure from this bad decision to loan this PNM nightmare, Nikwan thing, $120 million. Republic Bank members, Republic Bank's board has to answer to you, the people, the shareholders, on how did they qualify, what was the collateral to allow them to get 120 million US loan. Now, coming there, this story will also involve Vincent Nelson, the Nelson Gate senior counsel, who was used by Faris Al-Rawi and Rowley to attack political opponents and to be paid to turn witness and to make lies on a statement and an affidavit against political opponents while being paid millions of dollars of your money. Nelson, this story will have many more people. It will involve Ken Julian, Patrick Manning, and the most important one, Malcolm Jones. Let's get to the story that is Nikwan now. Because Nikwan, Ainsley Gill has said, and he's begging, if we don't get any money now, we're going to have to send home 70 workers. You can't get money. Carrie Chris just downgraded Nikwan to don't lend them money. They have no ability to gain any, they have no revenue stream whatsoever. They've not produced one drop of diesel. They have no sales to be made. And the PNM Ainsley Gill is calling now, begging for somebody to lend them money. The rating, Carrie Chris said, by that December will go even further. It's already at red flag. No money to come. Now remember, the PNM controls institutions. They have independent senators. You give me senior counsel, you ensure my next 30 years I can make an extra 100,000 a year, but I'm independent. I'm not beholden to you. I'm your friend. I'm on your boards. I follow your policy, but I'm not beholden to you. The PNM corrupts the word independent. We now have a president sitting in president's house who espouses the gospel of the PNM, and you all say, oh, she's independent. This is an amazing country we live in because the PNM has been allowed to hoodwink us. So Nikwan is now under pressure. It is on total collapse. The PNM Stuart Young is now trying to run and dissociate himself and keep Rowley's government from Nikwan. The Nikwan owes over 300 million US dollars. Then each day they have a wage bill that they have not paid for 6 months. They owe in former independent Senator David Small 21 million TT to pay off. Their debts keep mounting and they're selling nothing. This is the PNM. But you know who's going to have to pay for it? You, the people. You see how serious politics is? Because this is a continuation. This is the final chapter in a nightmare that began in 2005 with the PNM, with something called World GTL. In 2005, from the brain of PNM Malcolm Jones came World GTL. They found this company that nobody knew about, but this is what PNM does. They find companies without track record, without processes, without due diligence, without anything, so that they can corruptly take your money at higher percentages. That's what the PNM does. Because the PNM's corruption is a way that your money disappears like Copperfield, like David Blaine, and nothing there to see. All you see any horse race in Carney yet? All you see anything in Project Pride? You have a mosquito crack. You seeing things that ain't built. You see a commission of inquiry into Point Fortin Highway. It has start, but $11 million of your money from PNM, poof, gone. That's the PNM mantra. So 2005, they find this company, World GTL, just like how you saw Senator Wade Mark tell you they were planning to sell your refinery to 2 electricians in a house somewhere in California. Remember Wade Mark told you all that and Cat Spraddle that? That's the PNM way. That's how they found Bridgman. Bridgman's had no office, but they have a Kobo Star boat there that you have paid for $234 million and counting. That Keith Rowley, who approved the money, said was crooked money. So he approved the crooked money, then call it crooked. He approved the $55 million for a building for rat to sit down and mosquito to sleep, and then come to say he vexed the DPP, but he approved it. That's the PNM way. So World GTL, they were supposed to come with this technology to turn gas into liquid and make diesel and so on. They signed contracts. Now the interesting thing is this Malcolm Jones, this PNM that Rowley, Al-Rawi, Stuart Young, and Maxi Coffey in 2016 took out of court immediately and upon swearing on the Bible to be the government. Malcolm Jones was an executive chairman of Petrotrin. What does that mean? That means that Malcolm Jones was taking decisions like a CEO. He didn't have to go through the normal board process, the normal minutes of meetings and have a majority of the board members agree and approve and so on. And Malcolm Jones signed a contract with this World GTL thing that no due diligence was done. Just like Ken Julian investing $31 million in Bamboo Networks, even though former minister in the Ministry of Finance of the PNM, Christine Sahadeo, had told him, do not invest. And $31 million of your money, but now you have to pay taxes, you have to pay property tax, you have to pay online tax, you have to pay everything because the PNM throws away your money. And in this contract, it was supposed to be done and complete by July 12, 2009. And if it was not complete and producing diesel, then certain situations would have had to take place. And World GTL would have had to pay Petrotrin sums of money. But World GTL, somehow, whoever they were very powerful, and they were getting Malcolm Jones to say, you are supposed to pay me, but no, I will pay you. And Malcolm Jones took decision after decision. One of them was to guarantee the loan for World GTL to Credit Suisse of $600 million of your dollars, on top of $578 million of your dollars. And then they continued that way. And Malcolm Jones, the executive PNM chairman of Petrotrin, kept taking your money and bailing out World GTL, whoever they were, to the tune of $2.7 billion wasted down the drain with technology that did not produce anything. In comes Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Anand Ram Logan, and this needed to stop. Anand Ram Logan and the Attorney General and the office got Malcolm Jones into court and said this is wrong. They got advice from then senior counsel, Queen's Counsel, Vincent Nelson. He was paid and he wrote a detailed analysis and advice of about 36 pages of why the case would go forward against Malcolm Jones and so on. It was a strong case. Let's flash forward to PNM email gate, pathological liar Keith Rowley becoming Prime Minister. And he putting and swearing on the Bible his email gate lawyer to be his #1 minister of everything, Mr. 85 recusals. Nearly like Lara could make runs, he could get recusals. And Mr. My Brother's Bank, little company that next to Frankie's where we drink rum, never got a public sector contract. In the first 4 years of Stuart Young swearing on the Bible to serve you, his brother CEO, the company CEO of, got $4.2 billion at an average interest rate of 5.2 to 6.4% of your money. The interest rates over 18 years, company will make at least $300 million of your dollars. Whatever percentage the CEO gets of that, that's how they get their pay packages. That goes to Stuart Young's brother, Angus Young. Richard Young in charge of the IFC down there. IFC International Financial Center, not a center, not an investment, not a nothing, but $15 million gone every year. And the former central bank governor drop out and he come out and he never tells us why. That's what the PNM do. They resign when they see wrong thing, but they stay quiet. Shh. And Denise Deming, shh. and all your chairman and people of the PNM, and former Minister Lahunt, and Nicole Oliveri, who did an audit in Petrotrin and then was told that she was wrong to do the right thing, and where she is, shh, don't talk. That's the PNM cult. So, Malcolm Jones, you know who was Malcolm Jones' lawyer? When Anand Ramlogan got advice paid for, 36-page advice from Vincent Nelson saying strong case against Malcolm Jones, you know who defended Malcolm Jones? One Stuart Smallpin Young. Stuart Young was Malcolm Jones' lawyer. Then they come into government and Stuart Young is a minister, Rowley is the prime minister, Faris Al-Rawi is the attorney general, and Maxi Coffey is the minister of communications. And the PNM starts their Nelson Gate fiasco. And somehow they get Vincent Nelson to give an unsolicited, unpaid for advice of approximately 8 lines, 1 paragraph saying, hey, all my previous advice, don't worry about that. The case is good. All you take Malcolm Jones out. But here the joke in the PNM story. Nelson was writing the advice, the little paragraph. But the PNM so cranny to get Malcolm Jones out to protect the corrupt people that before they get the advice in hand, Maxi Coffey of the PNM said, well, this case we're going to withdraw from that case. The advice had not been given, you know. Here read nothing but them know that they're going to withdraw. And you can go and see the Privy Council tape of the Privy Council basically not believing the kind of politics and the kind of corruption that took place in Trinidad and Tobago with the withdrawal by the PNM, by Keith Rowley, Faris Al-Rawi, Stuart Young, Maxi Coffey, and the PNM cabinet withdrew Malcolm Jones from that lawsuit to recoup 97 million pounds, multiplied by 11 of your money. It didn't stop there. So the PNM talk about Kamla and Section 34, even though Kamla was in a government with UNC, COP, MSJ, TOP, and NJAC. But whatever Kamla, whenever an issue came up, Kamla Prasad Bisesa dealt with the issue. So the DPP wrote a 28-page letter, after being written to twice previously and saying nothing. What you all have done, this is dangerous. Kamla went to Parliament and fixed it. Kamla changes ministers who are not performing to her ability and what she would like. They perform better than the PNM. But do you know what the PNM tells you now? The PNM is stable because they leave Fitzgerald Hines there. They leave ministers there. Ministers who don't perform. Minister Gadsby Dolly, the worst performance in education in the last 3 years. But she is still there. And the PNM says that's stability because the PNM is not about merit. They don't care about performance. They say you could be in a ministry. You could be performing at the worst level. But we leave you there. So we are stable in our incompetence. That's the mantra of the PNM. So they took their boy out of court. So what is to do now? There was a lady called Alison Lewis. She was the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance. Intelligent, brilliant woman. In fact, when I was a minister, any project we want to do, we want to bring women in coaching caravan, life sport program to come and get funding to help fellas put on the gun, get all the crime. You want to get rewards program for elite athletes. You want to increase funding for TT Pro League and for Super League and for football and swimming and water polo and archery. You had to go to something called F&GP with the Minister of Finance. And right at the right side of the Minister of Finance would be Alison Due Diligence Lewis, the Independent Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance. And she advised the government under Kamla Prasad Bisesa when the Minister of Energy and the board of Petrotrin were asking what to do with this World GTL fiasco. Her advice was, that is bad money, that is bad debt, don't worry with that. But in comes the PNM on Emailgate Lies of Rowley, and poof, Alison Due Diligence jumps out of the Ministry of Finance, and where does she jump? Straight onto the chairmanship of the Port Authority Board of the PNM that started to procure and allow Rowley to say they couldn't find any vessels and so on. And when they Bridgman's. That's where she gets the name due diligence, because she knows the finance rules. She knows about tendering. She created the principles of propriety and corporate governance, but yet Bridgman's could not have even qualified to be in a tender position because they did not have the wherewithal, the asset base, the history, and so on. But somehow, Alison Lewis, the maestro, the master, approved that, and Bridgman's crooked money is still running up to now. So she went onto the P&M Port Authority board. She is also on the Republic Bank board. And pertinently to this story, when World GTL assets were going to be sold to some company called Niquan, she was the vice chairman. She was on the board of Niquan. So let's see how much you, the people, have lost. You have already lost the 2.7 billion from Malcolm Jones' decision. That money gone. You then have 2.7 billion worth of assets, 400 million US worth of assets. The PNM is now in control, and the PNM Minister of Energy, Franklin Khan, you know what he does on instruction of Rowley's cabinet? He sells your assets worth 400 million US to Niquan, Ainsley Gill, Alison Lewis, and independent Senator former David Small for 35 million US. Wow, that's a good deal. You're getting 400 million US worth of assets for 35 million, but wait, it ain't done there. Only pay us 10 million in cash. And then we'll take shares in Niquan that we don't know who is Niquan, where they are, they have no track record, they've done nothing. We'll take 25 million worth in preference shares. Now, right now, your preference shares of Niquan are worth what? Absolutely nothing. They're not worth as much as toilet paper sitting in a commode. It's nothing. They're gone. They have no money. They're in total collapse. But who has to suffer? Who do the shares belong to? So PNM makes the decisions, and you, the people, suffer. But somehow it wasn't finished there. Because in order for Niquan, and you just heard Senator Lyder say it, we on flat gas, which means the bid rounds at Stuart Young and Rowley and the PNM over 8 years, that's why they're fighting down dragon gas with Venezuela now, so much so they cannot even support Guyana against Venezuela in what is coming on December 3rd. But that's a different issue. But they're running down gas because we are utilizing our proven reserves now. We have found no probable reserves, and we have no hope from Stuart Young. 18 bid rounds went, and only 2 bids came on 18 blocks. So there is no gas. Our gas is a diminishing resource, and it's going down. But do you know what the PNM did with your precious gas? They gave to Niquan minister's share. What does minister's share mean? Mean the minister representing you, the people, swear on the Bible, the minister take your gas and say, Ainsley Gill, Alison Lewis, David Independent Small, here, you take this gas to produce. So the value that they were given of that gas is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Wow. And it has produced nothing. Your gas has gone. That is gone forever. Your children would never get that gas back. That is the PNM, and that is Niquan. Niquan came up. They start to try to produce. Wax build up, it blow up, and nearly blow up all a point up here in people's houses. Then a man from Massey, PNM to Massey, Jervis Warner, they get a contract to work there because everything had to share one way with PNM. They take all of your votes without campaigning, and then they take your money, wean you off of it, and put it specifically to friends and financiers. So Massey Gas now gets some contract with Niquan, and it's so unsafe that a worker dies. So on top of all of this, there could be lawsuits against Niquan that will ensure that they break forever. This is the corruption that is the PNM. But now, the major pain coming to you, on top of your 2.7 billion lost, your 25 million in preference shares US that is at zero, your 10 million cash lost, your gas, hundreds of millions of dollars in gas lost. Now, Nikwan cannot pay back the 120 million US loan that they got from Republic Bank. I am asking the board of directors of Republic Bank and shareholders, you all can take these questions. Anil doesn't ask these questions on behalf of myself and the UNC. I ask it on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because there are certain procedures, certain calculations that have to go into risk mitigation and approval for loans, especially loans of the magnitude of 120 million US. Who approved that loan? What was the collateral given in furtherance of that $120 million US loan? Republic Bank. So Nikwan cannot pay that loan now. What you're going to take? The asset that is worth nothing, that blowing up, that is decimated, that is not producing, but was only valued at 35 million US anyway. So even if it was pristine, you're still short 85 million US. Who is going to pay for that? What is going to happen to the share price of Republic Bank? Which heads will roll? How was that able to happen when people, SMEs, as Senator Lyder said, they have to go through stringent processes to get a loan, 10,000 loan, to do a little business? You have to go and see the mother house, the father house, the wife house, the girlfriend house. You have to go and check in between the teeth if they have gold in the mouth, where they have to go to get that loan. How is it, Republic Bank, that this PNM Nikwan, that started with Malcolm Jones, that started with Patrick Manning, that was produced and prolonged by Stuart Young and Keith Rowley and Faris Al-Rawi, provided legal advice by Nelson Gate lawyer? How were they able, with Alison Lewis being on the board of Republic Bank, how were they able to get that loan? The people want to know, because the people's money has gone again from 2005 to 2023. The PNM corruption spans that entire period, and the people must foot the bill. And this PNM who takes those decisions, then telling you, property tax coming, we've come in and it's not so much. It's in the smaller houses, it's $54 if you have no money. If you're owing more than you're making in a month, $54, $100, $200, you don't have the money to pay it. They take your gas, your fuel subsidy. They now come in to tell you, you must pay more for electricity bill. And Keith Christopher Rowley has the unmitigated gall, the temerity, and the disrespect to tell citizens that he telling TNTech to put the real cost of electricity. The PNM believes that the oil and gas is their own. The PNM under Rowley believes that the oil and gas belongs to him and Stuart Young. That's why they went to Houston and negotiated, and 11 companies, as Senator Lyder told you, in Point Lisa shut down. They moved Point Lisa from 78% capacity under Kamala Persad-Bissessar down to 18%. Trinidad and Tobago is in a forex crisis, not because of increased demand, but because of disappearing supply. Because Colm Imbot is the worst Minister of Finance in the history of the Western Hemisphere. The PNM does this and then tells you to pay. They come and tell you, go and pay more for electricity. Why? Because they say other countries pay more. Other countries are not blessed to be born with the red, white, and black. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, when she was Prime Minister, the same sort of advisors, the Alison due diligence Lewises of the world, came to her on 4 occasions that I was present and said, ma'am, this fuel subsidy that you are paying for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to get cheaper gas, super premium, and diesel in the car, and regular for fishermen especially, that is an inefficient use of resources. You need to cut away that fuel subsidy, and then you will be able to have more discretionary spending on where you want to spend it. And Kamala Persad-Bissessar looked at those intellectuals in the financial system and said, Do you believe that the resources of Trinidad and Tobago belong to each and every child born and holding a passport and a birth paper of Trinidad and Tobago? They said, She said, not, I'm asking you a question. What do you believe? They said, yes. She said, well, if you believe that as I do, Kamala said, then the best distribution and the most fair distribution of the oil and gas of this country is in the fuel subsidy. Because whether you have a car or not, you benefit. Food prices lower, medicine prices lower, transportation costs lower, bus price lower, maxi price lower, P-taxi lower. That is so everybody could share in the resources. The PNM is the anti-Kamala. The PNM's position is you must not have a subsidy. You must pay more for your tea and tech. You must pay more for your water. Why? So that Rowley, Small Pin, Maxi Coffee, Ainsley Gill, Alison Lewis, Malcolm Jones, deceased, alive or whatever, the money is still alive somewhere, that they could then take their own money and spend it as they wish. Hospitals, you get no Panadol, you get no oncology drugs, you can't get dialysis. But Rowley's favorite contractor get $162 million to build a fancy building for them to cut ribbon. That's what they do. The PNM and Kamala are different. Kamala uses the resources for you. The PNM uses your vote to allow the most corrupt decisions to take place for you to get no value for money and then tell you they're coming to tax you more. Politics is a very serious thing. You all need to get involved. This Nikwan fiasco has touched the people of Trinidad and Tobago like no other corrupt practice of the PNM, whether it was Tesoro, Lockjoy, Mount Hope, Financial Complex, Brian Lara, Greenvale, Renaissance, Email Gate, Bridgman's, whatever the corruption, this World GTL, Malcolm Jones, lawyer represented by Stuart Young, Keith Rowley, putting him on the Energy Committee and continuing him, Ainsley Gill, independent senators, public servant, former public servant and permanent secretary, Alison Lewis, straight up to Vincent Nelson King's counsel, corrupt to the core. The people suffer, and now you must pay the bill. The only way to stop this PNM corrupt means, this web of corruption, is to put Kamala Persad-Bissessar as Prime Minister. Corporate governance is about putting more eyes and ears and hearts on your money to protect it. Kamala Persad-Bissessar said one person for one board, one chairman for one board, no family members of ministers on any board. Rowley says, my lawyer, personal lawyer, 3 boards. My best friend of 50 years, who play golf with me, who is in charge of Paria and leave 4 men in a pipe to die and suffocate for 39 hours, he must be on 7 boards. Another one who's my Inez Gate neighbor, she must be on 9 boards, Ingrid Lashley. And the Inez Gate neighbors, including the now Central Bank Governor Alvin Hilaire, who only is the Central Bank Governor because Keith Rowley and Colm Imbert fired Jawala Rambaran. And you now have to pay Jawala $7.5 million. You want to know why the PNM fired Jawala? Because Jawala was talking about this foreign exchange situation from since 2016, that the big boys, the rich were getting richer and the small man would suffer. He predicted it, and now 10,000 small and micro enterprises do not exist because the people, the media, and us, the citizens, we did not stand with Jawala. We allowed Imbert and Rowley to fire a man who was patriotic and had the country's best interests at heart. And now we are suffering. The PNM is the most corrupt regime in the history of the Caribbean, and they must go. There is a difference between the UNC and the PNM. There is a difference between Keith Rowley, the golfing, jaunting, tracksuit wearing clown, and Kamala Persad-Bissessar, the statesman-like leader who loves people, loves children, fights for the poor, and implements policies to help you. She does not say wean yourself off of your own money. She tells the big businessmen, wean yourself out of corrupt contracts. The PNM is corrupt. God bless. Enjoy your Sunday and have a good day. Any questions?
We have two questions for Senator Lyder that was sent in. Senator Lyder, do you have any idea on the total amount of VAT refunds owed by the government to all business owners? And a follow-up to that, and the average allocation of Forex per business, if you have any idea of what would be
So
that.
currently, VAT refunds, what's the current amount of VAT refunds?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, we listened to a 4-hour budget presentation by the Honourable Minister of Finance, where he did not even mention once in this presentation anything about VAT refunds, VAT being paid and so forth. So at this point in time, that's why I asked the question earlier in my presentation as to, put the minister on the spot and tell us what is the current situation with VAT refunds, because the people in this country, investors in this country, need to know where we stand. As I indicated earlier, we found out it was 7.8 billion back in March 2022, this year. As much as we know, we believe $3 billion have been paid in terms of bonds. We have no indication whether or not the government did actually pay the $1 or $2 billion from the consolidated fund that was promised in the last financial year. So one only has to assume that this government, whenever this Minister of Finance goes quiet and silent, it normally means that he doesn't have good news to give. Believe me, if they actually pay the $1 or $2 billion from the consolidated fund, or if they have been paying VAT refunds on an ongoing basis, the Minister of Finance would have boasted about that. But we didn't see that. So we can only assume at this stage that if we were to take off the $3 billion in bonds from the 7.8 billion owing back in March 2022, and then we assume that several billions more would have been put back on, we can only assume that it would be back up to $7, $8, or $9 billion, meaning that the Minister of Finance really has not taken control of this VAT refund crisis. I think the government has lost control of this VAT refund crisis, and we are calling on the government to heed the advice of the various business chambers, heed the advice of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturing Association, and heed the advice of the United National Congress. I've been speaking at length about this crisis of the VAT refunds, that the government needs to take a more proactive approach to paying VAT refunds in a timely manner, so that businesses will not suffer, so that manufacturers will not lose liquidity and will not be stifled of liquidity and their ability to grow business, for their ability to employ more people in this country. So, I hope that answers your question. The fact is, we call on the Minister of Finance to come clean with this country. Let us know, are we back up to 7, 8, or 9 billion? Are we going into a deeper crisis, which when the minister tried to fix it with a VAT bond being pressured, he created a foreign exchange crisis. And in terms of your question, as it pertains to what is the average amount businesses are getting in this country, well, it all varies. You see, we don't have much transparency really when it comes to how foreign exchange is being divvied out.
Let me give you an example.
To various
I'll
businesses.
give you my example. A businessman called, I'll give you 2 examples. A big businessman messaged me and said he needed $150,000 US to pay suppliers over a 2-month period, and that he had been struggling with a very good bank of ours, and he eventually got 15,000 US after 11 weeks, and they asked him if he's okay. He said, well, I never know that 15,000 could equal 150,000. So what this also does, as Senator Lyder said, all of our businesses, our manufacturers and so on, all of their credit facilities are used up. So right now, for them to get goods, they have to pay cash on the dash. The next thing we saw was that one of our favorite banks, a fellow showed me the letter from the bank. He was trying to get US and he needed 100,000 US to pay off some period of 6 months or so on. And the bank told him, you can't get our US. He had the TT right there ready to convert it. But what we could do is we could give you $100,000 US loan at 9.65%.
Yeah. These are some of the things we're seeing. The truth is that, I mean, you have medium-sized companies that are getting, and as I said earlier, 1/10 of the request for US dollars, right? So as Senator Roberts indicated, this company needed 150,000, got 15,000, right? And that is what we're seeing. We're seeing the banks, and let me be clear, the banks' their hands are tied, really, because it's like one banker explained to me, look, I'm given a certain amount of US dollars, I have to actually try to split it up amongst a number of businesses that bank with me. And he has to give the bad news every single week after week. I think one of the most stressful jobs today is being a banker and having to face the business community today when you have to tell them that you are unable to provide them, even half of their US requirements. So there's no set amount given to any one particular business. I think it's handled on a case-by-case basis with businesses. It is clear that the much larger companies in this country who obviously would have a lot bigger loans with banks and would, be contributing towards the bank's bottom line in terms of profit, I am assuming that they will get a bigger share of the foreign exchange, while the SMEs, the small, medium, and micro enterprises who probably don't have that much loans with them would be lining up for $500, $1,000. I told you there was one bank that told me point blank at this point in time, 10,000 US dollars. Now to a very small company, 10,000 is a lot. So that would be great if they got that. But my company is a medium-sized company. There's no way we could survive on that. So what are you basically forcing people to do? As I said earlier, you're forcing almost every company in this country that requires Forex to break the law. That is the reality. That is the facts of it. This government has induced law breaking with our businesses. So it's no set amount, and I feel it for the banks. They really have a very hard task facing many SMEs. As I said, one banker explained to me that on a weekly basis he sees small, medium, and micro companies closing down simply because they cannot get foreign exchange. So,
final question to Senator Roberts about NICON. Keith Rowley appeared to dismiss the NICON issue by referring to the Peter Tosh song Magadog. What is your view on that response by him?
What is my view? The rats are running from the ship in droves. Keith Rowley created the ship. Keith Rowley's government took Malcolm Jones out of court. The Privy Council ridiculed Trinidad and Tobago and the PNM government for their actions. Keith Rowley and his Attorney General got a paragraph advice from Vincent Nelson, who they were also negotiating an indemnity with, to try and frame two UNC former ministers and senators. Keith Christopher Rowley's government gave Nikwan the assets of worth 400 million US for 35 million, 10 million cash and 25 million preference shares. Ainsley Gill is a PNM. Alison Due Diligence is a PNM. David Small is an independent senator. I say with a smile. Rowley's decision. Rowley's government gave Nikwan minister's share of gas. Alison Due Diligence, who is Rowley's PNM chairman of the Port Authority, was on Republic Bank board, and somehow Nikwan got 120 million US loan that I am baffled how they qualified for even a dollar loan. So Republic Bank, you have to answer. Rowley's government is the one that gave them gas. Rowley's government is the one that gave them the asset. Rowley's the one who utilized Malcolm Jones and took him and put him on as the head of his Energy Advisory Committee that has advised the collapse and decimation of the energy sector by Stuart Young and Keith Christopher Rowley. So all Rowley could do is sing Peter Tosh. Rowley could play golf in ugly clothes. He could kick his ball in the golf course in Mount Irving in the Prime Minister's charity golf tournament and people see him kick it. He could cross the road and Gary Griffith could boot him because people dying and he playing golf. He could fly in a tracksuit and he could talk nonsense. But it is Keith Rowley and the PNM that have lost over $5 billion of taxpayers' money on this World GTL Inter Nikwan fiasco. And thank you very much, Senator Lyder. You were brilliant. To the UNC family, to Trinidad and Tobago, thank you for paying attention. Share the information. Politics is serious. Politics is not about emotion. Politics is about people who will impact your lives. In Trinidad and Tobago, with a budget of $59 billion, the government decisions are very critical to your children, to your parents, to your safety, to your security, to how you work, to how you reach home, to how you party. We in the United National Congress stand ready with various intellectuals in every different disparate field in order to solve the myriad of problems that exist in our country. The time is now. We cannot afford one more iota of Keith Rowley and his decimation cabinet, or our country will forever remain a failed state. We have the resources, we have the brain, we have the ability to bring the policies to improve your lives. The United National Congress is fighting on your behalf, on behalf of the people. So on behalf of the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, I say have a great day. Shub Diwali to the entire Hindu community and to all of Trinidad and Tobago, because we all take part and celebrate with our Hindu brothers and sisters. Good afternoon. Have a great day.